How Ukraine weaponized water to cripple Russia's advance. The Belgorod Dam strategy explained. Ukraine turned a dam into a drone-deployed weapon, and Russian troops immediately learned why. One strike, one spillway destroyed, thousands displaced. You'll learn how a single piece of infrastructure became the linchpin of Ukraine's defense strategy, and why Russia's entire eastern offensive now hangs on whether water keeps flowing. Quick question. If you wanted to stop an army from crossing a river in the middle of summer, how many soldiers would it take?
Picture a summer morning in Belgorod, a Russian border region sitting just north of Ukraine. On July 19th, Ukrainian drones found their target, the Belgorod Dam, holding back the main reservoir in the Shebekinsky district. One strike shattered a spillway section, roughly 30 meters long, the safety structure controlling water from the reservoir. When that spillway exploded, control itself exploded. Water poured through at alarming rates, uncontrolled and unstoppable. But Ukraine wasn't done. Follow-up drones targeted the road running along the dam's crest, the narrow walkway repair crews need to access the damaged section. Hydraulic equipment took direct hits too, causing even more water to surge downstream. Russian repair teams faced an impossible equation: stay back or risk another strike. Most stayed back. The dam's destruction rippled outward. Uncontrolled water flooded into the Nezhegol River, which burst its banks within hours, submerging infrastructure and buildings along its path. In nearby Bezlyudovka, residents reported a new lake forming on Pobedy Street, making movement nearly impossible. An ordinary engineering structure had become a flooding machine, all because Ukraine had weaponized geography itself. Direct your attention downstream to a small village called Grafovka. This is where the real military calculus becomes clear. According to Ukrainian intelligence reports from the October 2025 strike on the same dam, 4 Russian brigades are stationed in this area: the 68th, 116th, 128th, and 136th Armed Forces Brigades. These aren't randomly placed units. Grafovka sits directly in the path of the floodwaters now surging from the breached dam. During the October attack, Ukraine's military documented that the resulting flooding directly impacted bunkers and positions used by these 4 brigades, displacing personnel, destroying supplies, and creating logistical chaos. Now, in July 2026, history is repeating itself. These same units face the same threat, only this time they're forewarned. Yet forewarning doesn't mean forearmed. Military units under flood threat must evacuate equipment, relocate personnel, and abandon prepared positions, all of which takes time, resources, and coordination. 4 brigades displaced is 4 brigades in disarray. The psychological toll compounds the physical one. For Russia's military planners, this means reassigning units, reorganizing supply lines, and losing momentum in whatever offensive operation they were conducting. This isn't just water damage, it's strategic disruption. Here's what most people miss about summer warfare in Eastern Europe. Rivers aren't obstacles, they're timers. The Vovcha River, which flows through Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region, is a natural barrier that stops armies cold when water flows high. But when summer heat strips the landscape dry, that same river shrinks to a trickle, and a barrier becomes a highway. This is the Vovcha paradox, and Ukraine learned in October 2025 just how critical it is to Russia's entire strategic calculus in the region. During that dry autumn, Russian forces had begun pushing hard into Vovchansk. By late October, Putin was claiming 70% territorial control of the region. The next phase was crossing the Vovcha River, a move that would unlock deeper penetration into Ukrainian territory. The problem? The river was drying up, and that was working in Russia's favor. Ukraine's 16th Army Corps documented the exact threat at the time. The enemy tried to fully exploit a window of opportunity. After a dry period and an extremely hot summer, the Seversky Donets and Vovcha rivers had dried up, simplifying logistics for the adversary. Dry rivers mean fast crossings. Fast crossings mean territory lost. Ukraine understood the equation instantly.
One dam strike could refill that river and slam the door shut on Russia's crossing strategy. What if Ukraine discovered not just a tactical trick, but a recurring vulnerability? That's exactly what the October 2025 dam strike revealed. By breaching the Belgorod Dam, Ukraine sent massive volumes of water cascading into the Vovcha River, raising water levels dramatically and making crossings suicidal for Russian troops. The tactic worked. Russia's crossing attempts stalled. Momentum halted. But here's the critical part. Ukraine recognized the pattern wasn't a one-time exploit. It was repeatable. Fast forward to July 2026, and Europe is baking again. Ukraine itself has been hammered by heat waves exceeding 30 degrees Celsius, straining the power grid and drying rivers once more. Russia, sensing the opportunity, is again attempting to force crossings of the Vovcha. Ukrainian soldiers have nicknamed the river crossing a death trap, yet Russian command continues ordering troops to attempt it in small groups, 2 or 3 at a time, fording the shallow water under fire. Ukraine just repeated the October playbook because it works. This is no accident. Ukraine weaponized a piece of infrastructure by recognizing a repeating seasonal vulnerability and striking at the exact moment Russia was positioned to exploit it. This is warfare, elevated to strategic geometry. If you're watching this and haven't subscribed to FISI yet, now's the time. We break down military strategy, geopolitical shifts, and real-time conflict analysis every single day. Hit subscribe, ring the notification bell, and stay ahead of the headlines everyone else is still catching up to. In January 2026, a local Belgorod news website called Fonar conducted a survey asking residents a simple question: do you support this war? The results should have alarmed the Kremlin. Around 25% of respondents said they were devastated and disappointed that the war had happened at all. Another 25% said the war had put their lives on hold. But the most revealing statistic came from a question about aid to Russian soldiers. Only 6% of Belgorod residents said they had given any support whatsoever. This is the psychological baseline before the July dam strike. Now consider what flooding does to already exhausted minds. The Belgorod regional power grid suffered major damage in early July when Ukrainian strikes hit the linear production management of main gas pipelines. Water shortages cascaded. Blackouts followed. Residents endured fire and then flood. One disaster following another in a region that now views itself as abandoned by Moscow. A dam strike doesn't just flood land, it floods resentment. For civilians caught between an invading army and a collapsing infrastructure, blame doesn't land on the attacker. It lands on the leader who put them there. Belgorod's people have learned a brutal lesson. The war Putin started comes home to those who never wanted it. Contrast Ukraine's dam strike with Russia's own history of targeting water infrastructure, and the moral asymmetry becomes unavoidable. In September 2022, just weeks into the invasion, Russian missiles struck the reservoir dam in the Ukrainian city of Kryvyi Rih, a dam that held no military value whatsoever. President Zelensky condemned it as terrorism, pure destruction with no strategic purpose. Fast forward to June 2023. Russia destroyed the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant in Kherson, a dam so massive that locals called its reservoir the Kakhovka Sea. The destruction was near total. Russia initially claimed Ukraine had done it, but the physics told a different story. The dam was built to withstand external impact. Only an internal explosion could have caused such complete destruction. Occupied by Russian forces, the dam's demolition pointed to Moscow, not Kyiv. Russia destroyed dams without strategy. Ukraine targets them with precision. The difference matters politically. When Ukraine targets the Belgorod Dam, it's not terrorism. It's tit for tat, applied against a legitimate military target that Russia itself has proven willing to destroy. Ukraine simply learned from Russia's own playbook and executed it better. Here's what intelligence agencies miss when they focus only on battlefield metrics. Public will is a weapon too.
On July 1st, the Ukraine-based Institute of Conflictology and Analysis of Russia conducted a telephone poll of 1,600 Russian respondents across the country, a snapshot of genuine Russian sentiment, not state propaganda. The results were staggering. 81% said they would support an end to the war immediately, if the option existed. Not eventually, not after territory gains. Now, immediately. 58% said ending the war should be Putin's top priority over everything else, over rebuilding the economy, over restoring infrastructure, over expanding influence. But perhaps most telling, 73% opposed a second wave of mobilization, meaning most Russians would rather end this war through negotiation than sacrifice more of their sons and brothers to an unwinnable, grinding conflict. 3 in 4 Russians reject the war itself, not just the cost. This is the psychological terrain Ukraine is now operating in. Every attack on Belgorod, every flooded village, every power outage, each one hardens that sentiment further. Ukraine's dam strikes aren't just military operations. They're psychological warfare against a population that already wants out, but remains trapped under Putin's command. The Belgorod Dam strike of July 2026 marks a deliberate shift in Ukrainian strategy. Ukraine is no longer content to merely defend its own territory. It's now systematically weaponizing Russian geography against Russian war capacity. One dam strike displaces 4 brigades. One flooded river halts a crossing attempt. One attack on infrastructure sends ripples of resentment through a population already fractured by doubt. Commander Robert Brovdy of Ukraine's Unmanned Systems Forces has been explicit about this approach. He stated his intent to add to the negative sentiment inside Russia, which could potentially raise tensions, to the point that they create a destructive process within the country. This isn't abstract, it's policy. Ukraine recognizes what Moscow is only beginning to understand. You don't win wars only on the battlefield anymore. You win them by turning your enemy's own people against the war itself. Ukraine is breaking Russia from the inside out. If this pattern continues, and there's every indication it will, Belgorod may become the flashpoint where Russian public opposition transforms from polling statistics into actual political pressure on the Kremlin. One dam, one summer, one region at a time. Ukraine weaponized geography by recognizing a repeating seasonal vulnerability, striking at the moment Russia was positioned to exploit it. One dam strike displaces brigades, refills a crossing barrier, and amplifies the resentment of a population already exhausted by war. This is no longer one-off tactics. It's a systematic strategy designed to break Russian will from the inside while degrading Russian capacity on the ground. The next time you hear about infrastructure strikes in Belgorod, remember, Ukraine isn't attacking civilians. Ukraine is attacking Putin's ability to wage war by turning his own people against him. For a deeper dive into how this strategy fits into Ukraine's larger defensive posture, check out our next video on how Ukraine is leveraging psychological operations alongside military strikes to shift the momentum of the war.